everyone, Jill here and welcome to my home. Today I'm going to share with you one of the easiest sourdough breads you can bake. This is most definitely friendly for beginners. So I kind of really just deep dived into sourdough a few years ago, and at that time not a lot of people were doing sourdough, and so there weren't a lot of resources, and I had to do a lot of hands-on learning, a lot of hands-on teaching myself, trial by fire, if you will. And so now I've kind of just made it my quest to simplify sourdough, teach as many of you guys as I can, give free resources, but I do also have paid content if you really want to just know start to finish processes. But today I'm going to share with you my focaccia recipe. It is so easy that a beginner can do it. My children have made this, and so let's get into the kitchen and show you how I make it. So last night I started the base for my focaccia and I let it rise all night, which it has done beautifully. So in here I have got my active sourdough starter, I have got water, I have got bread flour, salt, and honey. Now, I'm going to be giving you guys my focaccia recipe for free, so make sure that you click the link down below and it'll show you, all the ingredients, all the measurements and everything like that. But now, after I have let this set and rise overnight, we're going to do our second rise. So one important thing to note with focaccia is that oil is key. It does have a tendency of sticking to the pan. Now, you can cook it in a 9x13 casserole dish. Today, I'm actually going to be working with the cast iron skillet. But regardless, you want to make sure that you're just oiling it really well and don't skimp on your oil. If you use good, high quality oil that's flavorful, that is going to shine when it comes time to eat your loaf. And so for me, I don't ever skimp on the oil. And so I'm going to show you guys what I'm working with today. But of course, just find whatever's local and available to you. So here I have my cast iron skillet. I'm going to start just by coating this really, really well with oil. And then next I'm going to take my dough that has risen all night long, and I'm just going to plop it into here. It's going to be stringy. Now the important thing is that you want to make sure that you coat it. So I've got it good and coated on this side, but then I'm just going to take it and flip it. And you can see all that olive oil now is on the other side. You're not going to mess with it. You're not going to try to form it into the pan that you're working with. You are literally just transferring it from this bowl into this bowl. Now we're going to cover it with a damp towel and let it do its second rise for about an hour and a half to 2 hours. So I want to talk to you for a minute about why I believe focaccia is the best sourdough loaf to make for a beginner. I have got a beautiful daily loaf. Right here you can see there's some nice scoring that I've played around with, and I love making the daily loaf. However, I've been baking sourdough for a couple years now, and this is a bit more complex recipe. There are things called lifts and folds or lifts and tucks in the daily loaf, which is a process where you are lifting and folding or lifting and tucking the dough. And the recipe that I crafted and came up with is I do this every 30 minutes until I have reached 4 lifts and folds, and then I let it set overnight. And so if you are a new baker and you're thinking, oh my gosh, did I get the timing right? What is this lifts and folds? This is another process, another step that I'm not quite ready for. You can see it can become intimidating. It can turn you off. And so for me, I get asked a lot about sourdough. I want to get started with sourdough. What do? I always recommend find something that you know you are going to be successful at. More than likely with the daily loaf, you're just going to have more challenges because there are these other additional steps. Now that doesn't mean you can't start with the daily loaf and knock it out of the park. Like, I totally believe in you, but it might not be the best one because there are all of these additional steps. There is scoring the loaf, which is what you see here. This is all called scoring, where you can create like this little dog ear, and it's just a bit more involved. And so with the focaccia, you make the dough, which is all the ingredients that I listed and showed you. You let it sit overnight. You're gonna wake up that next morning, find your baking vessel, whether that's a casserole dish, whether that's a cast iron skillet. You're gonna oil it really well, plop that dough in there, wait 1 to 2 hours, come back. You're gonna dimple it, which I'll show you guys in a second. And then you get to decorate it. And this is where you can be super expressive, but it's not a lot of technique. As to where the scoring, that is gonna really alter the bread. When it comes to your bread art and the decorations that you can put on your focaccia, it's going to alter the flavor, but it's not gonna alter the structure or the rise of your bread at all during that baking process. And so this is really fun for me as a gardener because I get to really use the things that I'm growing within season. So the summertime, there's lots of edible flowers. There's lots of tomato and basil. This time of year, I'm kind of pulling from different herbs and maybe some reserves that I have in the cabinet, but you can really still be super creative. You can make beautiful loaves. I love to make different designs of flowers, of birds. I even did a Christmas tree last year with a bunch of vegetables I had in season. So you really can play around and still be creative. But as you've just heard, there are very, very little steps involved. It's one of those that if I'm in oh man, I forgot I need bread for dinner, it is my go-to because you can really alter those rise times quite a bit with the first and the second rise. I find there's a lot of flexibility with focaccia. And then the great thing is it's an Italian flatbread. And so this is the same recipe I'm using when I'm making all of my pizzas. And so instead of putting it in a bigger vessel where it's going to be deep, unless you want a deep dish pizza, I just take it and I spread it out super thin. And this is what I'm using as the base of my pizza. So once you kind of master this recipe, it can be really versatile for a lot of different things. All right, friends, I have pulled my bread out of the oven. It has cooled, and now I'm gonna share with you guys the finished product. So I baked it at 425 degrees Fahrenheit for about 30 minutes. For me, I don't really go off of time when it comes to baking my focaccia. I really like to peek occasionally, even though they say don't do that. I like to peek, and when it's reached kind of that golden color that I really like, that's when I pull it. So that's gonna range between that 20 to 30 minute mark, depending on the range that you're working with. But it turned out stunning. Knowing the colors to work with on bread art is really important. I have a recipe guide right now that I kind of dive into the different bread arts, the colors that do well, the colors that are gonna turn brown during that baking process. So if you're interested interested, you can find all that stuff in the description. But I use these bell peppers, and as you can see, the bell peppers did great. The onion holds its color. The olives did great. And then the thyme, it just looks like this beautiful piece of grass. So I am making a red lentil curry for dinner that this is going to pair so well with. But if you are wanting to dive into sourdough and maybe you don't know where to start, the idea of all these lifts and folds is a bit intimidated for you, try the focaccia. Like I said, the recipe will be down below. It is a great recipe to get you into sourdough. If you are a beginner, if you're scared, try it. There's not a lot of steps involved. There's a lot of creative freedom. And honestly, it tastes amazing. It can look stunning. And I hope that this recipe will encourage you to get in the kitchen and try your hand at sourdough. But thank you for hanging out with me. I'll talk to you soon.